Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So last week I went over the optional class features for Rangers, as well as the new companion options for Beastmasters from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. In my last video, I went over the Fey Wanderer Ranger, which I consider the best designed Ranger, mechanically, from any source. If you haven't checked out those videos, I'll post links in the video description. Today, I'm going to go over the Ranger subclass that is my favorite overall. And it is my favorite subclass overall in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and that is the Swarmkeeper Ranger. But before we do that, I would like to thank some of my top level patrons. These Archmage level patrons provide me the opportunity to take the time to do these videos, and their support is so appreciated. So thank you to Tazzle, Thomas Barrero, Jay Gemmel, Joseph Robideau, and Michael Troy. I sure appreciate your support. Let's get started. So when I first glanced at this subclass, I wondered, they turned Pigpen from Peanuts into a Ranger subclass? I mean, it seemed pretty weird to me. Then after reading about it, I thought a bit more, and I started to think of other things than flies that the swarm might be comprised of, and since then, I've been a fan. The Swarmkeeper Ranger is described as having a bond with a swarm of nature's spirits. The swarm becomes a force for them in battle. They are outcasts. They are loners. They are the crow. Or,
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman!
The Swarmkeeper is encouraged to flavor their spells and abilities to encapsulate the idea of the swarm. Suggestions include a gaseous form spell appearing as the melting into the swarm, or an arcane eye spell being an extension of the swarm. The swarm takes any appearance you want. Suggestions include a swarm of insects, a bunch of miniature twig blights, a bunch of fluttering birds, I would say a murder of crows, obviously, a bunch of playful pixies, which gets a little bit too Fey Wanderer for my taste, or, my own suggestion, a colony of bats. Mechanically, the Swarmkeeper gets fewer abilities at 3rd level than the 3 that has become the standard for Ranger subclasses since the Player's Handbook. Generally, a Ranger subclass can expect 3 abilities at 3rd level, and the Swarmkeeper only gets 2, but one of them is really good. And that first one we get is the big one, Gathered Swarm. This is how it reads. Once on each of your turn, you can cause the swarm to assist you in one of the following ways, immediately after you hit a creature with an attack. First is the attack's target takes 1d6 piercing damage from the swarm. Second one is the attack's target must succeed on a strength saving throw against your spell DC or be moved by the swarm up to 15 feet horizontally in the direction of your choice. And the third one is you are moved by the swarm 5 feet horizontally in the direction of your choice. What I love here is the flexibility of this ability. I also love that it's unlimited, and it isn't eating up your bonus action, like similar abilities such as the telekinetic feat. This is an ability for tactical players. The 15 feet of movement of another creature is very nice. We also choose the direction, so it has a much more flexible tactical application than a repelling blast or a grasp of Fadar or a telekinetic push. You can move creatures into the Spirit Guardians, or into a Moonbeam, or an Ever's Black Tentacles, or a Stinking Cloud, or just move them away, or off a cliff, or off the side of a ship, or maybe we just move them into melee range of the Sentinel character. 15 feet is pretty far, too. Now, technically, in an emergency situation, you could even hit an ally with an attack and move them the 15 feet as well. There might be situations where this is worthwhile, especially if they're being grappled and restrained, for example. There's no mechanics in the game for voluntarily failing a saving throw, so a saving throw still may be applied. That's going to be up to your DM. But if you are moving an allied wizard, probably the save isn't going to make any difference at all. The Raging Barbarian is a different matter, though. My last comment on this ability, you should note the ability says up to 15 feet, which means you can choose to move the creature less than 15 feet. Again, this is a tactical advantage as you move them right where you want them to go. Finally, moving yourself can be very useful. It might be just the extra 5 feet of movement you need. That's the simple application. But how about moving out of a web spell? Or out of the jaws of a creature that is grappling and restraining you? Or out of the reach of a threatening enemy? Tactically, this is a super useful ability. And since we're pretty much attacking every round, I'd be looking to use this ability pretty much every round. Maybe not if we're casting a spell, maybe not if we miss with all our attacks. Otherwise, I'd be looking to use this every single round. Now, if there's no tactical use for the movement abilities, then take the d6 extra damage on an attack. Nothing wrong with that. It's likely a straight 3 to 4 extra damage on your turn. So there's really no reason, as long as you attack and you hit something, you should be able to use this ability. So yeah, this ability I think is amazing, super useful, and you should use it all the time. But I will say that I think tactical players are going to get the most out of this. For non-tactical players, this is likely going to be a d6 damage, which is fine, but it's not special. Tactical players though, hoo boy, this is something. The other ability we get, starting at 3rd level, is our Swarmkeeper magic. Like all Ranger subclasses since the Player's Handbook, we're going to get an additional spell known for every level of spell we can cast. Unlike other Rangers though, we also get a cantrip, which is Mage Hand. Mage Hand is a very handy utility cantrip. Rangers usually don't get cantrips, so this is nice. But let's look at the other spells we get. Our 1st level spell is Fairy Fire. This is a very solid 1st level spell. It's also an area of effect spell, which is nice when we have a weapon using character, because weapons of course are single target. Then at 2nd level we get Web. Now this is maybe the best 2nd level spell in the game, and it is definitely the best 2nd level battlefield control spell in the game. Also, it's a spell that remains good at higher levels, which makes it really nice on a half caster. I feel a bit bad for Artificers here, as we have now their best 1st and 2nd level spell options, and they are free spells known for us. Web is also great to combine with the ability to move allies or enemies. When an enemy breaks free of this spell, move them back in. That combo is going to be crazy good for you. Then for 3rd level we get Gaseous Form. This is our first so-so spell. Not to say this is a useless spell, but this is definitely circumstantial. It's not a combat spell, and out of combat it's going to be useful once in a while. At 4th level we get Arcane Eye. Now this is a great utility spell. One of the best in the game actually. And then for our 5th level spell we get Insect Plague. And this is normally not my favorite spell. But you know what? It's a decent spell when you can move enemies around 15 feet on your turn. So we have a choice. We could do Web for control or Insect Plague for extra damage. So this is a good list. Web, I think, is the huge standout here. And it would be even if the Swarmkeeper couldn't move enemies around for free every round. But since they can, this becomes astoundingly good. Then we get to 7th level and we get Writhing Tide. And how it reads, you can condense part of your swarm to a focused mass that lifts you up. As a bonus action, you gain a flying speed of 10 feet and you can hover. This effect lasts for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So I think this ability is thematically appropriate, and mechanically I think it's pretty good to be able to fly and hover without concentration. It's also nice to be able to activate it as a bonus action, but the 10 feet movement is quite slow though, and the limited uses means a player will be more hesitant to use it for those little utility things, where it's likely to be a lot of fun and flavorful. Still, concentration-free flight at level 7 is certainly useful, and this is a decent ability. At higher levels though, we're likely to have better flight options through magic items and the like. That brings us to level 11, where we get the Mighty Swarm ability. This is a boost of our level 3 ability, and the boost is pretty good. Your gathered swarm grows mightier in the following ways. First, the damage of the gathered swarm increases to d8. Second, if a creature fails its saving throw against being moved by the gathered swarm, you can also cause the swarm to knock the creature prone. And third, when you are moved by the gathered swarm, it gives you half cover until the start of your next turn. So all three abilities are just straight up better. The least exciting to me is the damage increase from D6 to D8, but a point of damage is a point of damage. That's already the least exciting of the three, and it remains so. But at least it's still less exciting, but a bit better. The force movement option now gives you the option to knock prone. And I'm glad this is presented as an option rather than a requirement. Because I may not want the enemy prone if they are likely to be targeted with ranged attacks, for example, but the ability to knock prone can help melee attacks, or even better, makes it much harder for them to escape the area of effect control spells you just knocked them into, especially if that effect already hinders movement, such as a web or spirit guardians. Or maybe you just knock that enemy that you just hit prone so you have advantage on follow-up attacks. Or so they're set up for a grapple. This takes something that was already really good, makes it really, really good. Finally, if you move yourself, you get half cover until the start of your next turn. If you want, this is just a straight up +2 armor class that's going to stack with your normal armor class, and you could basically do this on any turn you hit a creature with an attack, so it's almost a +2 armor class gain. And I don't think this is the best tactical application, but +2 armor class is nothing to sneeze at. Unlike a lot of abilities that boost armor class, this doesn't use your reaction, it doesn't use a limited resource, it's not limited to one attack, or limited to ranged attacks, or limited to melee attacks. In a lot of cases, moving yourself 5 feet to get this might be straight up better than the D8 damage, even if you didn't need the movement. So yeah, again, the force movement options are king here, in my opinion. I like the extra damage, but these movement options were already good, but they just got a lot better. This is a really strong 11th level feature. That brings us to the capstone of the subclass that we get at 15th level. It's called Swarming Dispersal. You can discorporate into your swarm, avoiding danger. When you take damage, you can use your reaction to give yourself resistance to that damage. You vanish into your swarm and then teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 30 feet of you, where you reappear with the swarm. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now, universal damage resistance, usable 5 times per day, eventually 6 times per day, as a reaction is pretty decent, but not amazing for 15th level. But adding in that 30-foot teleport brings it up to amazing, in my opinion. So for example, Tiamat breathes poison on the party, so you gain immediate resistance to the damage, and teleport so you miss out on the lightning, fire, cold, and acid breaths. Or the Tarask bites you, and you take a ton of damage and are grappled and restrained, except you take half the damage and aren't grappled and restrained, and out of range for the following claws, horns, and tail. Creatures at this level have lots of ways to deliver damage to you, and you can really put a damper on that with this ability. As a defensive ability, this is quite good and worthy of a 15th level ability. So if we look at this subclass as a whole, I would have to say the Gathered Swarm ability at 3rd level is amazing and the chief draw for me for this subclass. I tend to be a tactical player, and so a tactical ability like this really appeals to me. Still, I'm probably not going to want to jump out of the Ranger right at 3rd level, because Gathered Swarm is going to work so well with the web I get at level 5. Now after level 5 I might consider multiclassing, but if I don't, concentration free flight, even if it's slow and limited, is okay at 7th. But at level 11 there are some really substantial improvements to my Gathered Swarm, which take my ability and make it so much better. And level 15 gives a really strong defensive ability, so this is still a subclass you can absolutely stick with for some good payoffs as you get to higher levels. I think the evolution of the mechanical benefits are a bit better distributed with the Fey Wanderer subclass, which is why I consider that the best mechanical design. But this subclass is probably every bit as strong, probably more so at 3rd level, than evening out by 7th. Thematically though, the subclass is something personally I find a lot more appealing. You be Peter Pan.
I'm Batman.
So, that's all the Ranger options in Tasha's. Hope you find that helpful for your next Ranger. I definitely think the Ranger is a perfectly viable class now, and with a lot more effective options than just the Gloomstalker. I will be moving on to Sorcerer, which I will be discussing in detail in my next videos. I hope you'll join me, but until then, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.